Hello, my name is Todd Peterson, Executive Director of Love and Truth Incorporated, a spiritual, not-for-profit, non-governmental organization whose mission is to proclaim the power of love to the universe. We're headquartered in Portland, Maine, and what I would like to talk to you about today is one of the issues that faces the whole world, which is how we deal with the problem of terrorism and violence. I think that we can all agree that we want to end the violence and the pain and the evil in the world. I'm sure that anyone who's watching this now will agree with me that it would be a worthy goal if we could end this, end terrorism and the killing, the needless pain and suffering that so many people are currently facing right now, whether you look at Yemen or at Syria, at Egypt, Lebanon, Afghanistan, really so many places in the world. And we've got to stop the terrorists, don't we? How do we stop them? Well, ISIS is a pretty scary terrorist group, probably the most famous one currently in the world. And right now, the Russians have sent troops and airplanes to fight ISIS. The United States is trying to fight ISIS, and the idea is that we can kill the evil. But that is what we've been trying to do for the last 10,000 years, and we have never succeeded. Nor have we consistently or on a global basis tried to do the opposite, which is to not kill the evil and the violence, because killing is evil. So what you're basically doing is introducing evil to end evil, and it doesn't work. You don't have to trust me on that. Look at the world. Look at the history of the world. It doesn't work. There's only one way to end this violence and to defeat these terrorists, and that is to be peaceful. That may sound counterintuitive. You say, yeah, but right now they're actually cutting people's heads off. They're enslaving people. We have to go there and kill these people. No matter who I talk to, whether it's people in Europe or people in Lebanon or people in America, whether you talk to the terrorists or the victims, everybody's got, or not everybody, but most people seem to come down to it at base. They always find at least one subgroup that is an exception to the rule on killing. It's like, in general, we've got to stop the killing. We've got to save people, be merciful, but this particular group of people must be killed. And that's where the problem arises. I want you to think for a minute about the boys and men who are in Al-Qaeda or in ISIS or in the Taliban or in any of these other kind of groups, or in the U.S. Army or the U.S. Marines or the Russian Army or the Ukrainian Army. You think that any of these people who are out there even cutting people's heads off or shooting people or firing mortars or rockets at people, do you think that they say to themselves, I am an evil guy working for an evil cause, and may evil win? You think so? No. Deep down, they believe they're doing what they have to do, and that they're somehow doing something right, that they're fighting that evil, the evil ones that have to be defeated. None of them seem to realize that they're really fighting themselves. But in order to show them how this works, we first have to recognize also where all this evil comes from. Let's go to, I was born in Washington, D.C. I'm, by the rules of the society that I come from, I'd be classified as an American. And us Americans have had a long and rocky relationship. Actually not so long, actually pretty short in the overall scale of things, but we've had a pretty rocky relationship with the country known as Iran. And if I look on CNN or Fox News, which I have, I've seen before the announcers talking about, the nuclear accords or desire of many of our Republican leaders in the United States to bomb Iran into a parking lot, or to launch a war on them as soon as possible, because that's all those people understand, So they say, and they say, well, Iran and America have had a really bad relationship since 1980, when our embassy was seized and our hostages were all held captive for almost a year. And you may remember that, and you think, yeah, God, I remember that. And then that crazy Ayatollah came in, all these wars, all this religious extremism, all this executions of drug dealers by kind of brutal execution means, suppression of women, suppression of gays, things of that sort. And we see Iran as a really terrible enemy, and a place of extremists and people that are very irrational. But let me ask you something. Are you aware that the United States government, with the CIA and our partners in England, went into Iran in the 1950s and organized a coup d'etat to overthrow a democratically elected Iranian government? And we did that because we had a lot of interest in the oil and petroleum business there, and the democratic government wanted to nationalize their own national resources and say these are for the benefit of the Iranian people, and they wanted to charge their own money and not honor contracts that, or not have contracts with American and English oil companies. So we overthrew them, and as a result of that, the Shah came into Iran. And the Shah was a military dictator, like so many of the ones that the United States government has favored over the last 100, 200 years, and supported and put in power and worked with. And the Shah had a secret police called the Savak, and they tortured people, they killed people, they put them in prison, they ruined lives, and it resulted in untold suffering for the Iranians. And ask yourself what it would be like if your mother, father, or son or daughter, or brother or sister was executed, or imprisoned, or tortured, or all the above. How would you feel? And if that was done directly because another country invaded you, think in the United States, foreign country, maybe China, Russia, launches a coup, overthrows our government, puts in place a vicious military dictatorship of some element from within our country, some extreme element, and then together they work at exploiting us and keeping us in submission, and they kill, imprison, torture your family members or you. How would you feel about them? Would you maybe not say, man, these people are evil, this is the great Satan? Yeah, probably. Because that's kind of what we are. When you do that kind of a thing that results in thousands of people being tortured, imprisoned, and killed, and you are responsible for it, you've basically done that. We did that to them. And then we turn around and talk about why they're so bad. You see the disconnect? Iran is just one example of this. We can go through the whole history of the United States. Most Americans lack any perspective or knowledge of history. And in our schools, whether college or university, we're mostly brainwashed. And if you're not brainwashed in the schools, you're brainwashed on the outside. So you really don't have a clue what the real truth is. What the real truth is behind the government of the United States of America right now, which is a vast and evil Mammonite military dictatorship, which it always has been. Vietnam. Vietnam was going on when I was a child, and we heard that we had to go and fight communism. But for the communists, and for the Vietnamese in general, it wasn't a war about communism. They didn't know the difference between communism and capitalism and all of this. They just knew that their country had been occupied for many years by the French and by many other people, and they were fighting for national independence. We put it, the military dictatorship we supported in South Vietnam was vicious. They were prejudiced. They abused religious minorities within their sphere of influence. They did not respect human rights. Many people were killed and suffered, and the actual truth, as reflected in our own government records in the Pentagon, and which can be easily looked up and documented by reading a book by Nick Turris called Kill Anything That Moves, shows that what we were involved in Vietnam was essentially a vast genocidal racist war against the Vietnamese. And we killed hundreds of thousands of people for no reason whatsoever. This is a fact. And this is a huge crime against humanity. Now, a lot of people turn and say, yeah, but, look what they did. No, don't look what they did. Let's look what we did. Let's look what we're responsible for as a nation. And then you ask yourself, personally, within your own heart, do you want to take responsibility for that? Do you want to be responsible as a vast murderous entity? Because that's what you are as a citizen of this country, because you're supporting it. By going to the call center, the convenience store where you work as a clerk, by going to that cubicle where you're a middle-level manager in some vast, unpersonal corporation, you're supporting the logistical base of this vast machine that runs an empire of death. And it's not just Vietnam, of course. Kill Anything That Moves is a book. I think you should read that. It also includes a lot of details of personal interviews with Vietnamese victims and American soldiers of Vietnam. There's no escaping the record. What I'm saying is true. Just if you might be upset or angry to hear me say it, but go and research it and say, well, fuck, the guy is telling the truth. Okay, don't get mad unless you think I'm a liar. But please don't take it out. Don't take it out on me that I'm speaking the truth. I'd appreciate it if you didn't shoot the messenger. Let's go to Taliban. Most people ought to know that the Taliban were basically just an offshoot and just another name for the Mujahideen, freedom fighters, who we created, and including Osama bin Laden, who we trained, supplied, and gave legitimacy and power and a lot of money and weapons and training to in advanced weaponry to fight the Russians who were on their doorstep. It was as if the Russians came into Cuba, like if we were in Cuba, which we shouldn't be, of course, and the Russians come in and to fight us, supply all this different equipment, and create some sort of powerful military force to fight us on our own doorstep. Why would they do that to the Russians? In Afghanistan, I don't know. It was basically because they were the enemy, and we do anything we can to hurt the enemy. So after the Russians left, there's the Taliban. Mujahideen becomes a Taliban. Our chickens come home to roost. And next thing you know, we're fighting the thing that we created. Similarly, ISIS is an American creation. And now we want to get more and more money to go and fight them. In terms of our military industrial complex, we supply weapons to both sides in most battles. We supplied weapons, poison gas to Saddam Hussein, also to the Iranians. We supplied both sides and watch them slaughter each other, and then we provide more and more weapons. In Yemen, we poured tons of weapons in. It's all taken by we don't even know who takes it. It just we don't really care, because we make our money off the weapons. Not we, but our military leaders here in the country, the military industrial complex. So basically, what you have to realize is that to solve the evil in the world, you have to solve the evil within. And let's think about the crime of murder. Is there a statute of limitations? No. Is the United States guilty of torture, death, and murder? Yes, directly. If I went out as an individual and went down to some bad neighborhood and brought a bunch of guns, which I could easily go and buy if I wanted to, I could go and buy them and take them down and arm a bunch of people and say, hey, I want you guys to work for me on doing this or that. Who's going to be responsible for all the deaths that they commit, especially when I pay them salaries and keep sending them money and more guns and more bullets? Could I get out of it and say, I have nothing to do with what they're doing? I'm not responsible? No, I'd be locked up. And so too should this country. We are guilty. But we can't lock up the country. And also, I don't think that my fellow Americans really intended to be so evil. They've been fooled, propagandized, we've been ignorant, we've been asleep. But it's time to wake up. We have a moral responsibility as humans, as people. And now it's time to look at ourselves and say, look at these things. These are not the only ones. I could go on and on and on about the crimes of the American government, but they're crimes of murder and torture and greed. Things for which holy repentance is required. So, I'll tell you what William Lloyd Garrison, the 19th century American abolitionist and peace fighter, or basically he was working for a peaceful reclamation project for global peace. He said that we recognize the authority of no earthly government. That's because each one of us is a divine creature, a sovereign creature under God, and we cannot abdicate our moral responsibility. So please check into these things I have mentioned, think about them, and say to yourself, do I want to take responsibility for these things? Do I approve of this kind of mass murder? Do I approve of this recklessness and evil? If you don't, then join the revolution. And what that means is just tell everybody you meet, the American government has no authority. It's a reprobate and apostate regime. It is the great Satan. And unless you revolt against it, unless you join us in saying no more, then you are guilty of it, and you're guilty under the divine light of truth for horrible things. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? If this country was a person, it would be considered one of the worst serial killer in the history of humanity. Really. I would be ashamed to be accepting of participating in something like that. Truly, truly ashamed. Hi, I'm again, Todd, Executive Director of Love and Truth Incorporated, High Priest of the Temple, and hope you're having a great day. Love, truth, and peace to you. I would like to take a moment and talk to you about the universe. Me and a few friends of mine were watching a video the other day about quantum spirituality. And basically the idea of quantum spirituality is you take quantum science and then predict what you expect the world would be like based on the results of your findings. And what I've heard, which doesn't surprise me, which I knew intuitively, is that the world is not made up of matter, and it's not a mechanistic, Newtonian, Cartesian sort of universe. It's much more closely related to the sort of idea of the world that you would find in Eastern religions, like in Buddhism and Hinduism. And we actually live in a world that's very mystical in character. I'd encourage you to research what the mystic conception of the world is, but one of the nice things about mysticism is that if you're a Christian mystic, a Buddhist mystic, a Muslim mystic, a Hindu mystic, a mystic without a religion, a mystic with your own religion, mystics, for the most part, seem to be on the same page and be able to communicate without argument and without disagreement about the true nature of reality. And I think that's a good sign that they're closer to the reality. That they don't cling so hardly to their symbols, to the rigidness of creeds and facts and stories, that whether they don't like fight and kill each other over whether a story is true or fable or or so on, because they recognize that reality is sort of an artistic rendering, a sort of a literary or an artistic sort of conception of world based on consciousness, rather than us being just a strange byproduct of some impersonal, mechanistic, and meaningless universe. So we live in a mystical universe, and the fact that you're listening to this right now, even if it's just one person in the whole world listening, is very significant for you, and possibly for me too. So what do we take out of this? Well, I've been going through some amazing, just incredibly powerful and profound spiritual experiences for the last year or two. And at times they've been really just sometimes confusing, sometimes really hard to communicate in a way that sometimes makes you feel a little isolated, because it can be hard for other people around you to understand what you're experiencing. But what I've come to, and even now, as this process is intensifying, I notice that even those closest to me here in Portland, Maine, don't actually see what I see. They don't actually feel what I feel, and they have a hard time trusting what I'm saying and doing, because the guidance, the understanding that's coming to me, the communicatory nature, the magically communicatory nature of the universe, which is manifest to me, isn't always manifest to them. And I've been struggling with how to deal with this. I think that I think as what I'd like people to remember is, and this is for the record, the things that I've been saying that I would do I've been told every step of the way are impossible. I can go back just to last year, and I can go back farther, and no matter how far I go back, it seems to always be the same trend. When in 2009, when I lost my job down in Washington as a senior communications specialist at the American Nurses Association, I said I was going to go up to Maine. I drove, and I did. I drove like 16 hours nonstop in my motorcycle, got myself up to Millinocket, Maine, and I began looking for like a farm with an acreage. I had quite a bit of cash at the time, and I was looking to get an actual 100 acre farm. I ended up in the end buying 5 acres for cash, and without the mortgage, that was the best deal to do. But as I was planning that trip, and before I actually had left, there was not one person in my life who encouraged me. It's the opposite. Virtually everybody told me that it was crazy, don't do it, you should just go get yourself a job as a senior communications specialist at the VA or NIH or some other government agency or some NGO or think tank down in Washington, and continue on your career, go the next step, go from senior specialist to director, finish your master's, which I was like halfway through with a 3.7 GPA at the University of Maryland in international management. But I knew that wasn't right for me at that time, and I left it, but I had to ignore basically what everyone else around me said, and that's always really been my case my whole life, and it may be your case too when you finally get ready to come and join us and join the revolution. So don't be discouraged if you're the only one who's seeing what you see, because it still may be very real. everything I've been saying has been vindicated to me by ongoing and continuous communications from the divine realm. And I am so excited, and my heart is overflowing with love and gratitude that just continues to amaze me. And I wish the same for you. I guess to conclude, what I would tell you about this universe that I've learned to understand so much better in the last couple of years, it's a universe which is magical, and where the world outside responds as if by magic to what's going on inside you, within your own consciousness. And I've actually seen this happen over and over, and I don't mean like you'll hear, say, a scientist talking about this and say, trying to defend it to the skeptic. They'll say, well, it's not a real surprising thing. My consciousness can take these hands, and although there's no building here, I can consciously envision a little cabin. Then I go over, take my hands, pick up wood, start putting it around, and maybe nail it up, get a hammer, and soon I have myself a little house. There, my consciousness just created a house, utilizing what's around me. But I'm talking about something a little more direct, that I don't have to do anything with my hands. I don't have to do any physical action. I don't even have to be in the room or in the country. I can reach out across the world, probably across the universe, and make changes simply through the power of my own consciousness. It goes back to my original premise when I first decided, or first realized, that I was on a journey of deep spiritual and inner transformation. That it came to me that this feeling, and this was a feeling really strongly influenced by a lot of psychedelic tools, psychedelic sacraments of many kinds. I realized that if I could change deep inside myself, that the world around me would change. I'm kind of skeptical by nature, and that was my feeling, but I wasn't positive. So I thought I thought that maybe I'm wrong. So I thought, well, I'll have to have a sort of a practical plan alongside the magic plan to make sure that I'm successful in this job of universal peaceful reclamation and the healing of the soul of humanity. So I envisioned then Love and Truth Inc. as this positive cancer in the world, which would make love the priority and proclaiming the power of love to the universe, and not money, not this Mammonite value always of money, which I hear people counting and talking about so much, it just makes me sick. And so Love and Truth Inc. was supposed to be the sort of a practical, real world way to change things, just in case my little magic plan didn't work. So I have the two routes. And I'd say that both things are working simultaneously. So that's good news. But there is a lot of evidence that this is true. You probably know the story of what happened in August of 2014. It's just one example. I've told it before, but I'll say it real briefly for those of you who haven't, in case it's like the first video you've ever watched by me. And I was on my way up to Montreal for some psychedelic, a psychedelic run for something called Aphrodite, powerful psychedelic sacrament. And 3 hours south of Montreal, I was driving. I was sober. I wasn't stoned. I wasn't smoking weed. I wasn't on anything. And I was riding with my 18-year-old son and my Belgian friend Alexi, and I said a prayer as I was driving under my breath to the goddess Aphrodite, which I know sounds a little strange, but that's what I was doing. And I admitted when I said that prayer that I wasn't sure if that was her name, but that's what I would use for the time being until she told me differently. And I told her that I'd come to believe in her because I'd been working on these invocations and prayers over the previous weeks, and things had happened, which I'll tell you another time, that led me to believe that certainly there was something going on. There was a real spirit here. I didn't originally expect it to be. I'd had an idea to build a temple to the divine love, and I thought Aphrodite, being a goddess of love, would be a nice personal personification and identity for that temple. So that's what I'd started with, but I gradually started to realize that there was actually a spirit at work. It was at first a tentative and gradually growing feeling to where I finally ended up in front of, sitting in my driver's seat up in Maine in the dark, 3 hours south of Montreal, praying to Aphrodite. And I said, Aphrodite, or whatever your name is, I know I feel you're there, and I love you. I've come to feel, in fact, that perhaps what I've been loving all my life was a spirit. Yeah, even when I was in love with, say, women or other people on the planet, I think what I was really in love with was a spirit. That may be the same spirit that's flowing around through different people and places and times. And that was kind of a confusing idea to me, but it's kind of how I felt things were happening. So I said, which is good. I said, but I'm a physical man here with a body, and I'm a lonely man. I haven't had a wife or girlfriend for a long time, and I'm by myself. As a physical creature who there's nobody there to hold my hand or put their arm around me or kiss me. And I said, I wish that you could become a corporeal woman, like a physical body, like me, so you could actually put your arms around me and kiss me like a real woman, not just a spirit. So that was the prayer. But the weirdest thing ever happened. That very moment that I said that, an answer came into my head. It came like a teletype message. It wasn't a verbal hallucination, an audible hallucination. It wasn't a picture. It was just as if the words were there, and they were soon, not long to wait. And I was shocked and flabbergasted. And I said to my son and Alexander and Alexi, I said, guys, I said, I feel a little shy to tell you this. I feel a little embarrassed because it's kind of weird, but I was just praying to Aphrodite to asking her to appear as an actual physical corporeal woman. And I just got an answer back that soon, not long to wait, we'll see her in the flesh. And they didn't even say anything back, because I talk all the time, too much. One of my vices, I suppose, is being having a little too much to say. And so we just continued driving, and we had our phones turned off when we crossed the Canadian border, because the roaming charges by AT&T are absolutely ridiculous. And I say, everybody ought to quit AT&T. They're a shitty company with shitty values, and they support a lot of bad causes, and you should go to Cradle. But that's just if you can, switch from AT&T. They don't deserve your money. Anyway, so we had our phones turned off, and I was sitting at McDonald's in Montreal, where we stopped for a cup of coffee and also to get directions, because we didn't know where to go, where our hotel room would be, or what part of town to go to. So I'm sitting there with my coffee in McDonald's in Montreal, and I think I better get directions. I look over and I see a woman. I said, "Hi, do you hear me?" Or I said, "Hi, do you speak English? Do you understand me?" And she walked over, and I said, "Hi, my name's Todd." And she said, "Hi, my name's Aphrodite." And of course my mouth dropped open in surprise, and I was like, "Really?" And Alexi and Alexander also were like just looking with shock. And she said, "Yeah, Aphrodite Patra." And she was a Greek Canadian, and she was her birthday was the same as Venus, or moon sign Venus, or whatever. So I don't know what you call that, precognition, whatever. It had telepathy. I don't know what I took it as a sign that the spirit is real. That's what I took it as, and I have ever since, and I still do. The spiritual world, I know it. And that's just one of endless signs that I've experienced. It's one of the easiest ones you can tell because it's very concrete and there were witnesses. So anyway, yeah, the magic is really deep, and I've discovered that the universe responds to my thoughts, and my expectation is it probably responds to yours also. So be very careful what you think about, and be very careful what you wish for, and make it something good, and do your best to always be positive. Don't envision negative things. Realize that you have the power to manifest whatever you want. So don't be spending your time in recriminations and anger and jealousy. But in order for it to really work, I'm not positive, it might work anyway, but I think what you really need to do is practice the eternal verities of love, forgiveness, patience, gratitude, and grace, among others. And then this will work for you like magic. So that's really good news, right? So I'd like, if you, once you get that going, to help me with the project to end war on this planet. And there's a very simple way to do that, by becoming peaceful. America is the most powerful military power in the history of humanity, and we've fought more wars than any other country in the world, and never on our territory except the Civil War or the Indian and Revolutionary Wars. But recently we just go around attacking people and spreading weapons and mayhem around the world, making money off it, and that has got to stop. The military-industrial complex must end, and we together, as citizens of this land, no longer citizens, now revolutionaries, must call for the city of God on earth, to have a home for humanity that doesn't have all this war and hatred and violence. And that means taking it out of ourselves. So we need unilateral disarmament and demilitarization, and I'd like you to join me in recognizing that and spreading the word that that is what's going to happen. I am saying right now, and this is October 2015, Todd Peterson of Love and Truth Incorporated is hereby making a prophecy that the military-industrial complex of the United States, which stands in opposition to the divine will of the universe, shall be razed to the ground, and there shall be no more war made from this land. And once that happens, the rest of the people of the world will begin to understand, because everybody said it is impossible to destroy this military-industrial complex. It will be impossible to disarm and demilitarize the United States, to which I say, no, it's not impossible. It's totally possible, because I have set my mind on doing it, and I am constantly envisioning it and planning for it. And if you join me, we'll be unstoppable, because I know I'm unstoppable already. So be optimistic, wildly optimistic, and join us. And please support us, spread the word. Get on our website, loveandtruthink.org, or on Facebook page, or on Love and Truth Inc. on Facebook or on YouTube, and spread the messages. Tell your friends. Tell them we have to join together, and together we will accomplish this. Sound good? I love you all. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your support and for your love, and God bless you. Bye.